welcome to this edition of A Life Less Serious, where we see how serious thinking gets in the way of us, really expressing ourselves in the world and being all we can be. And I'm really grateful to be joined by the wonderful Tania Elfersy, who has just written, who has done a chapter in our book, A Life Less Serious, but also just released another book, which is called, Tania?
The Wiser Woman's Guide to Perimenopause and Menopause.
And it's a really book full of wisdom that kind of points us in this direction, but within the context of women going through perimenopause and menopause. I thought it'd be interesting to start off, Tania, to share how you sort of came to this understanding around seeing beyond your serious thinking and how your serious thinking was affecting your life, and what you saw beyond that, or how you came to that realization.
Yeah. I really came to this understanding that all of the writers in the book share, because I was taking my thinking so seriously, and that was creating a lot of stress in my life, and I didn't understand that at all. At the time, I was in my mid-40s. I was juggling my little business, trying to sell my first book, which is on motherhood, and my kids were young, and I was remembering my life in corporate, and having all these thoughts come through my head about, essentially, I'm not enough, and I'm not earning what I thought I'd be earning, and I'm not managing to create a success in my business that I thought I would be able to create, and motherhood feels hard, and everything, was coming down, felt like it was coming down on me, and this thought of I'm not enough kept appearing in my mind. And when it did, I thought it was true, because I thought that when thoughts come into your head, then there's truth in them. And then even more so, when a thought comes into your head and it makes you feel bad, I thought, well, there's even more truth that I'm not enough. And then I thought, well, I must do something to make me feel more enough. So I got onto the wagon of, let me see what self-help things I can do to make me feel more enough, because surely I'm enough, because surely I can't be not enough. And if I could just think I'm enough, then I wouldn't be thinking that I'm not enough. And it just created more and more what we can call sort of a thought storm in my mind all the time. And I ended up just feeling bad a lot of the time. And at that time, I was also, I'd entered perimenopause, and I was just discovering about that, which is a sensitive time. So perhaps feelings that you might have experienced in your 30s, when they sort of come in your 40s, they feel a bit louder somehow, let's say, and that is because it is a sensitive time. And then I came across the 3 principles of innate health, and very soon I had an insight about the nature of thought, and I saw that I had a choice, and I didn't have to take my thinking seriously. And it was just as simple as that. I saw, well, these thoughts come into my head, but I have a choice whether I need to take them seriously or not. And I saw that life would probably be easier if I didn't take them seriously. And it sounds so simple, but for me, that had a very, very profound effect, almost instantly clearing up all sorts of symptoms that I was experiencing at the time, emotional symptoms and physical symptoms. And it just allowed me to live a life much less serious than I had been living before. And didn't mean the thoughts didn't come into my head. I still had those thoughts of I'm not enough, and I should be doing this, and I should be succeeding in a different way. But I had created a completely different relationship with all thought. And so it didn't matter what thoughts came into my head, because I didn't need to take them seriously anymore. And that really set me off on a path, exploring more how this understanding can help us even while our hormones are in flux, and at any time in our lives, and how that can bring us peace of mind, and we can just have a nicer time in our life, no matter what the circumstances are.
That's really powerful, Tania. That's really, really powerful. And you share that now with lots of people, don't you?
Yeah. So since at first I couldn't quite understand like what had just happened, when my symptoms all disappeared within days. And with time, I realized, wow, that's something pretty incredible. And finding out more about the 3 principles, I realized that lots of people have these transformative experiences from insight alone. And it doesn't really fit in with a dominant narrative of the way we view the human body, the way we understand health, which is very much built on an idea of, if you have symptoms, then surely you need something outside of you to fix you, because there's something malfunctioning in your body. And the way that I see it today is that when we have feelings and symptoms, it's simply the body doing the best it can to overcome conditions that we've created on the ground. And the feelings, for example, aren't telling us something true about what's going on in our life. It's just telling us the state of our thinking in that moment. Are we in a low state of thinking, or insecure thinking, or are we feeling lighter? And when we feel bad, we are just taking thinking seriously. And when we are burdened by symptoms, there is something that we're doing that's not in balance with our natural innate health. And our body is just creating symptoms either to overcome that situation or to wake us up to the fact that we're living out of balance. And so I'm sharing this now with, I have been since 2015 with women who are going through midlife change, and enabling them to see that natural symptom relief is available to everyone with the things that we already have inside of us, which is the way our brilliant body works. And this whole system of thought, feelings, symptoms, it's all designed to keep us on a path of good health, not make us feel bad and, that we're off a path of good health. It's designed to bring us back to the path of good health. And when we really learn to listen to the body and trust its brilliance, we can have a different experience of symptoms, of midlife change, of anything that we're facing. And we start working in a beautiful cooperation with the wisdom in our body. And we start to feel much, much better.
Yeah, and I hear this. It's funny because I'm listening to you and I'm having serious thinking in my head, and I'm getting because it's the first recording I've done, and I've experimented with some sound thing, and I'm thinking, oh my God, is it working? And I can feel my body getting tense, and I can feel, it's like feelings of anxiety, and I can feel that's my body's way isn't telling my thinkings off. Now I could go down that whole rabbit warren while I'm talking to you, but I don't really want to. But that's how innocuous serious thinking is, isn't it? It's we're always kind of in and out all the time, and it's just funny how much we want to buy into it or not. Now and I guess it's our body's way of telling us that. But I mean, I don't know about you, but definitely in my past, if I had palpitations or if I felt anxious, I felt like, well, if I'm feeling like this, then that must be reliable, I must have to get really worried about doing the banking or whatever I was getting neurotic about. It must mean that this is a very serious thing and you have to be, really on it. And I used to think that was a sign. And actually, it's really funny since I started to get more of an understanding of a different view of it. It was actually just a habit I got into around those things, just like I'm getting a habit about this. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, I'll turn it might do this again. Sorry. But I'll get beyond my panicky thinking in my head about it, because really what's the point? But I guess and the more I saw that was just my body's, I got into a habit about things like that. I get a whole about, like I'm getting a habit now. I'm getting a habit of thinking about I'm doing something wrong, I've done something wrong, and all of a sudden the thing's coming, and that's my body way of telling me. But I could go with that, or I could, and I think that's what you're kind of saying about perimenopausal symptoms as well. Like it's our body's way of sort of, and it's something I'm learning about as well, because I also sometimes get symptoms, but it's, you know, I sort of am learning that my body is trying to tell me something about it. It's trying to tell me something. It's trying to tell me to look after myself or take a walk or whatever it does to make sense, and to not go down that rabbit hole, and to sort of laugh at it and see it for what it is. Yeah, I don't know if you want to say to that.
Yeah, it's about viewing our body as this divine energy, you know, that it is, rather than a machine. Because if the body really behaved like a machine, then when we felt that something was off, then we would need, you know, something from the outside to come in and fix that thing that's off. And the body actually doesn't work like that, because the body has everything it needs to keep us on the path of good health. But we, in our innocence, come in and create conditions so often of stress that then cause chaos in the body, because the body's trying to overcome this, you know, force of stress that we are creating through taking our thinking seriously. And just through misunderstanding that the way the body works and the way that the human experience plays out, we just spend a lot of time in our lives trying to analyze, fix, find that thing out there that's going to make us feel better inside, when the body knows how to do it perfectly. So when we get caught up in even like the thinking of, okay, even though I've done a Zoom call, you know, hundreds of times, I'm thinking that this time it's not going to work out. Like, is that true? Or is that just true about our thinking in the moment?
Yeah.
And we can't really see that it's just about the state of our thinking in the moment until we play. And I often encourage my clients to just play with when you come across something that you think, oh, that, you know, this situation, that's that person that's making me feel bad, or it's this situation that's making me feel bad, or these circumstances that are making me feel bad, or that politician on the TV that's making me feel bad. Is it? Or is it you're thinking about the politician, the circumstances, you know, whatever you're experiencing at that time? And it's always our thinking, because we can't have a different experience but through our thinking. But we can only really see it when we've played with it. So even, for example, if a woman is having, I don't know, an argument with her kids, and can she have a different experience of that moment right then? Can she have a different experience of it? And just us falling into that, remembering of, oh, I'm feeling my thinking, and thus there must be a different experience that I can have. That's enough for a different experience to slowly emerge. We don't have to bring in the thought that must be, oh, I do love my kids and I understand that they're hungry and they've just come home from school and they don't really mean what they said. We don't have to have all those thoughts like resting in our head in order to have a different experience of our kids in the moment. We just need to remember that a different experience is available to us, and that is enough. Just let the system flow. The thoughts will be replaced and we'll have a different experience. And we don't need to create the stress around having the different experience, because it naturally occurs when we let it. But like I said, we need to play with it, and maybe not with, you know, I often say, if you've got a big story going on in your life that you think is very heavy and full of stress, you know, you could play with that, but just start playing with the light things and see how easily they change when our thinking changes just by itself. And that will give us confidence to trust this understanding and say, oh, this must, you know, be everywhere. Because it is.
Yeah,
So,
I love that. And I think for me, that's how I first experienced this. It's like, you know, I remember I was on a bus once and I was feeling very anxious, like I did. I think I thought, had I left the iron on, or, you know, the usual thing. And I remembered I noticed I was getting very anxious. And then I noticed, oh, no, I'm just tired. And I thought, well, maybe I'm just getting anxious because I'm tired. and that created just a totally different feeling, and poof, it went away. And then I was, oh, maybe something's happened here, you know. And it was just like you said, playing. And then I found myself cooking dinner for, you know, lots of people, you know, for family and stuff, for like, I don't know, 15 people. And normally I'd be banging and crashing, and somehow I wasn't banging and crashing and swearing. I was just kind of going from thing to thing to thing. And that was a different experience, because I didn't have to relate to it in the same way. And I think that's why I love the thing about you saying playing with it. And I think there's also something else to add about, like, I think that a lot of this comes from that you were saying about trusting your body, but there's also this infinite possibility. We are infinite possibility. We are infinite, you know, wisdom. Except we don't think that. We just think we just think we don't have a clue what to do. You know, of course sometimes we get in extreme situations and we know what to do. Of course, we always know what to do.
Yeah.
No, it's just that we think that we won't. So we kind of build things up, or we think, you know, if something's going wrong, you know, if this didn't work out, I'll just, you know, it'll work out whatever is going on. Even if it doesn't record properly or whatever, I'll phone Tania up and I'll eat humble pie and something will work out and I'll get over myself and whatever. It may not be ideal, but whatever, we'll kind of know what to do in the moment. And I think sometimes we miss that, don't we? And that can cause a lot of serious thinking and thinking like we have to plan, and you know, we have to sort of overcompensate for things rather than trusting. And I think the trusting thing is there's a quieter voice, actually, I think. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Tania.
Yeah. Well, actually, what comes to mind when we talk about this idea of there's always a different experience to be had, and you can really feel the flavor of the stress that we can create innocently. Again, it's so innocent, because if we knew like the chaos that could create, really, we would just like let it go. But in our society, it's just acceptable that we live with some level of stress. So the stress that we can create about anything, that comes immediately with a feeling of constriction and fear and closing down, etc. And the feeling of possibility that can come from lighter thoughts, such as, I'm sure if this just doesn't record well, then, you know, I'll just find another way and we'll just do another interview. Like, that sounds like possibility, and it feels like lightness. And there's no limit to how that can play out. So I'm like thinking of something that I wrote about in the book about experiencing perimenopause symptoms, and I write about a case where there was sort of, let's call it sort of online bullying that happened, and I I'd been a bit used to the online bullying, but then I was also censored, and for some reason I thought that was really serious, and, you know, that was really outrageous that they'd censored me. You know, it was their group, whatever. But I was taking that whole experience very seriously and thought that there was something very serious to do, and there was something that I'd have to work out, and etc. And after a whole long spell of not having any perimenopause symptoms, I started having night sweats. And I was already at a place in my understanding that I knew I didn't need to worry about the night sweats. And women say, well, how does that happen? You know, at 3 a.m. you wake up, you're completely soaked and you can't get back to sleep and you're worrying about the next day. And I was waking up at 3 a.m. completely soaked, and I had a completely different experience of it than what I would have had, you know, a few years before, because I knew that was just a sign that my thinking about this situation that was going on was off. But there was nothing that I needed to do. And so I could just lie there and experience the night sweat and realize that it might take me a little while to go back to sleep, or maybe I need to, you know, change my night clothes, etc. But there was nothing that I actually needed to do to get me back into a place of calm, because that would just happen. And so I did have like 3 nights of night sweats or whatever it was. And then I had a fresh thought about what I wanted to do with the situation. I sent an email off to the moderator of the group and I moved on, and the night sweats stopped. Now, if I had got into that situation of, for example, which I had done in previous years, oh my goodness, I teach this stuff. What am I doing having night sweats? That's terrible. And, this is really serious. And maybe this is going to mean that I'm going to have hot flushes as well in the day. And maybe it means that I'm going to have migraines. And maybe it means, then I could have created a big storm and a lot of stress, and my body would have reacted accordingly. But instead, I could just lie down and go, oh, this is so interesting. Look what my body's telling me in this moment, that I'm just a little off balance. And there is nothing for me to do, because I just know the way that the system works. I will come back into balance in good time. And I knew that the night sweats would disappear, and they did. And so, like I said, you can play with it in so many areas, but everything is possible. There is no limit to this understanding. So even when we're experiencing symptoms, whether they be perimenopause symptoms, menopause symptoms, or any other symptoms, there is still a different experience to be had of them, and we can take them lighter. And wow, what happens when we take them lighter is that they tend to clear up much quicker.
I love that, Tania. And it's quite funny because I've experienced that on this call as well. So we are, sharing it in real time. Oh, excellent. And I guess I'd like to sort of end by saying, what does a life less serious mean to you?
Yeah, a life less serious means to me just living in more joy. That's what I've really seen, that joy is my default, and it's not only my default, it's everyone's default. And when we can fall into that, really relax into it, life is just more fun. And it's not like I have to understand that joy is my default, because of course that's not serious, but it's just seeing it, just relaxing into it, and everything just starts being more fun and easier, and we realize, yeah, wow, there's a lot more on offer than when we take life very seriously, and we get to touch different opportunities that come into our life that perhaps we don't see when we take life so seriously, because we're so focused on one issue. So it's really about joy and possibility and the ability to sort of play in so many realms. It is transformative, and just tiny insight can have such a huge impact. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, thanks, Tania. It's been such a pleasure and a joy. And an experiential experience to speak to you today.
I am so glad that I am your experiment, and it will just be so, you'll just remember, we can have joy in this experiment, and we can just continue. So yeah,
exactly. And that's all we're up against, isn't it? Moment to moment, I'm just in and out my serious thinking all day.
Yeah. And it's right. So we all forget, and then we can just remember. We just have, with experience, I like to talk about banking experiences. You play in one area and you remember, oh, wait a minute. I remember I was so serious about that, and it turned out I could just have a lighter time. And then we just spend more time in lighter times, and things just become more fun. So yes, that's what's available to us.
Amazing, Tania. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Bye, everyone.